Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear viewers, Assalamu alaikum. I'm your host Faisal Raza Khan and you are watching Foresight. Viewers, today whole of the nation is celebrating our founding father, Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah's 148th birth anniversary. So congratulations to whole of the nation. And also, our Christian brothers and sisters are celebrating Christmas. So across Pakistan and in the whole world, we are congratulating to our brothers and sisters of the Christian community as well on their celebrations. Viewers, Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah once said, and I quote, "The weak and defenseless in this world invite aggression from others. We do not cherish aggressive designs against any country or nation, but to extend moral support to oppressed and suppressed peoples of the world, and upholding the principles of the United Nations Charter." Pakistan's missile program, which is the guarantee of our nation's defense, is now under attack. It's again targeted by the US through an executive order 13382 on December 18th, 2024, in which Washington imposed sanctions on 4 Pakistani entities, including the state-owned National Development Complex NDC and 3 other private entities. US always attempts to sanction Pakistan's missile capabilities in past regarding the nuclear program and even the military strength. And since it has got India in its kitty, now Washington always trying to negate Pakistan in one way or another. But here, our founding father, Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah's another quote: "There is no power on earth who can undo Pakistan." Biden administration especially has imposed the barrage of sanctions against Pakistan during its tenure. And it is at least 6 times. And when it comes to year 2024, there are at least 3 times when the Biden administration imposed these sanctions. First in April, then in September, and now in December. It's not a new phenomenon for Pakistan, as the US is habitual of sanctioning Pakistan since 1965 till now. And unfortunately, Washington has the behavior, a special behavior, that's once when they need, they use, and when they don't need that, any country, they throw away. Unfortunately, this phenomena is now in and current when they have India as their strategic partner. To discuss this very important and vital issue of Pakistan's national security, we have in our studios Dr. WASEEM ISHAQ. He is the international relations expert. Most welcome to you, Doctor. Thank you very much. And with him, Syed MUSTAFA BILAL. He is a research assistant at the Center of Aerospace and Security Studies, CAS. Most welcome to you. Thank you very much, Mustafa, for your presence here. And online joining us, Brigadier Retired Syed GHAZNAFAR Ali. He is the strategic affairs expert. Most welcome to you, Brigadier Sahib. Thank you very much for your presence online. My first question is to you, Dr. WASEEM, that since the US withdrawal from Afghanistan, Pakistan's military and defense capabilities becomes irritating in the eyes of the US administration. Might be because of Pakistan's relations with China, or because the American interests are now finished off in Afghanistan, or due to the US strategic interests aligned with India against China. That's why the Biden administration, after the launch of the US Indo-Pacific policy and lots of other aspects like India as a counterweight to China, or so-called net security provider and all others. 6 times they put sanctions on Pakistan's, particularly Pakistan's missile program. What's the motive behind?
Thank you, Faisal, for inviting me. I think we are discussing a very important issue of Pakistan's national security. But let me just build the perspective of the past history of Pakistan-US relations. From my perspective, Pak-US relations have always been on a roller coaster ride. And those relations have always been transactional and event-based. Whenever United States had some sort of interest where Pakistan should be supporting the US interest in the region, and especially in the context of Afghanistan, or previously because of the Soviet expansionism and United States wanted Pakistan as a bulwark against Soviet expansionism. So therefore, they chose Pakistan as a non-NATO, first line non-NATO ally. However, whenever we have seen in the past, the US interest from the region was over, they put Pakistan under sanctions. So this has been the history of the United States-Pakistan relations. Now, just see events from 2001 war on terrorism onward until today, they chose Pakistan as a first line state or a front line state for the US aims and objectives which were there for Afghanistan. And Pakistan, from the history, tried to be a US partner because we wanted to be on the right side of the history. So therefore, a very pragmatic decision, foreign policy decision was taken. However, we have seen that the United States needed Pakistan till the finalization of Doha agreement and handing over of whatever mess they created in Afghanistan to a Taliban. So till then, they were considering Pakistan as an ally and a partner. And soon, their interests were over, so they started putting Pakistan under sanctions. So we have seen this regime of sanctions in the past, and history is now repeating time and again. So we can't be exception of the history. While we consider it in the respect to India, the US national security strategy of 2017 granted India a very, very specific status for the grand US designs for the East Asia and subsequent great power competition. And as a result, we have seen the US Indo-Pacific strategy, which said that India is a fulcrum of future US interest in East Asia as a counterweight to China. And thereafter, India is part of the US-led quadrilateral dialogue, which is against the China. India has embraced all such US-led organizations which are actually aimed at counterweighting China. So from that perspective, starting from the NSG waiver of 2005 until today, India is getting all sorts of concessions from the United States, while Pakistan now, since from the US national security perspective, does not hold that significant position, so therefore it has been put under sanctions.
Definitely. NSG waiver in 2008 when the Obama administration has given that. Definitely. Mustafa, we know that John Bass, the US acting Under Secretary for Political Affairs, visited Islamabad a number of times, then this year particularly. Then came the State Department's December 18th sanctions, and the US Principal Deputy National Security Advisor Jonathan Finer accusations that Pakistan's missile program is a threat to the United States. What makes the Biden administration to impose such sanctions on Pakistan's ballistic missile program, especially when Shaheen 3 particularly and Ababil under the radar? Why such statements and actions just a moment before the Trump administration and right at the last juncture of Biden administration?
So thank you for inviting me. I completely agree with Dr. WASEEM's assessment of the rationale behind the imposition of sanctions. As rightly pointed out by you, this is not the first time Pakistan's missile program has been under scrutiny by the US since its inception. And just in the previous year, again as you stated, sanctions have been imposed thrice. But this installment of sanctions in particular is quite concerning because for the first time reportedly, the NSA has been targeted, as well as 3 of its affiliates based in Karachi. But while the sanctions can be dismissed, I think the allegations which have been levied by Jonathan Finer, they are quite concerning. He was of the view that down the line, our missile capabilities would be so technologically sophisticated that we could strike well beyond South Asia. within the continental United States. That was quite a stretch, both figuratively as well as literally, because the distance between Islamabad and Washington is more than 4 times the range of our longest range ballistic missile, the Shaheen 3. So as the Foreign Office said, it was...
might be more than 5 times, because it is
Yes, sir.
beyond, it's 12,000
Yes, sir.
kilometers.
Yes,
And
sir.
when we are talking about Pakistan's highest ranged missile, that is Shaheen 3, it is 2,750
Yes, sir.
kilometers. So it is surprising, really.
Yes, sir. The Foreign Office rightly said that it was perplexing as well as illogical
Yes.
for any U.S. official, especially of one that is a leading U.S. official in the Biden administration, to actually...
And by the way, he has, when he was there at the Carnegie Institute and addressing that WMD sort of a seminar or conference or talk, whatever that was related to the weapons of mass destruction. But that was a written statement. It means it was prepared well before that and got lots of briefings. It means it was not the thoughts merely of Jonathan Feiner. These were the thoughts, basically the policy shift of the United States right now. And in United States, most of the times administration changed, but the policy remains intact. So how do you see that perspective, basically?
Sir, I completely agree that this was for the first time that a high-ranking U.S. official has publicly voiced such concerns against Pakistan. But I think another thing that should be...
And the vague concerns.
Right, sir.
So, your point well taken. Brigadier Retired GHAZNAFAR Ali Shah Sahab, why the US is feeling Pakistan's missile program threatening and sanctioning when Pakistan's missile and nuclear program is absolutely safe under the multi-layered security mechanism, when International Atomic Energy Agency certified its foolproof security architecture, when Pakistan adhered export control regimes, international legal obligations, when the US itself commended it several times and acknowledged that Pakistan's missile program for its own security. And why so? Is it you think that politically motivated or a diplomatic pressure Washington wants on Pakistan? What's behind reality?
Thank you very much, Faisal. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Actually, whatever you have said in your introduction, in your question, and whatever has been said by the previous speakers, we have to see everything in the light of that context. And if I go into the background of that, if I go to the historical background of that, I remember one word which John Zawlak, he said to George Shultz in December 1982, and that was the Pakistan and Americas are basically the union of unequals. And once you say of union of unequals, it comes down to your geography, it comes down to your culture, it comes down to your national power. Hello, Pakistan.
Please go ahead, Brigadier GHAZNAFAR Sahab.
Pakistan being unequal to the Americans had been helping them out to the extent, if you go into the history, that Pakistan opened the route to China for Americans. And the first Chinese visit, everybody remembers that. It was taken during Yaya's time. It was from the Kissinger came to Pakistan and then flew from here in a PIA aircraft to China. And after that, the Americans and China built their relationship up. And I can count number of incidents in the history where Pakistan went out of the way. You see in the Bada Bear base where we spoiled our relation with Russians. But the more we go into the history, the more pinching it becomes. I personally feel that the United States is not only driven by its own self. I am totally convinced that by targeting Pakistan, United States is basically driven by the neocons and the Zionist power. And Zionist power is one power which is driving whole of the world and which is driving whole of the Americans. Even Americans are fed up of the Jewish influence into the American foreign policy. And the APAC, the American foreign relationship, where how they sponsor congressmen, how they sponsor the induction of Republicans and Democrats into the Republic. And those are the people who are devising the policy. The speaker before that very rightly said that the Americans had been comparing Pakistan as compared to the Indian angle. And in that Indian angle, there was a very famous thing where in 1963 South Asian trips, the US
It's
Foreign Secretary
for
said,
sure that
yeah,
Pakistan's
yeah.
missile program is fundamentally the response of the regional security environment. Do you not think that in that case, Washington's sanctions are entirely unjust? Singling out Pakistan is totally unfair, severely undermine the sovereignty and the right to self-defense.
It's not.
When at the same time, the similar actions of the US allies like India are encouraged, like nuclear attack subs with K4 and the BrahMos versions, aircraft carriers having the S-400 Russian defense system. By the way, it's against the United States security architecture because Russia is nowhere in that. Despite of that, Russia is giving leverage to India. Then third for India and Indian intercontinental ballistic missile capacity and capability, and even they are having the weapons to target satellites and all that into the space. So, which are there in ready mode. So why only Pakistan?
It's Pakistan because Pakistan, if you want to define it in one sentence, it's only because Pakistan is a Muslim country, and Pakistan is the only Muslim country which has the nuclear capability. And as I told you, the American Zionism and American neocons have an eye on Pakistan's nuclear program, and repeatedly it had come into the Western press that Pakistan nuclear capabilities may fall into the hands of the terrorists and all that, TTP and Khawarij, all those people. I mean, they are so stupid, I would say, in this, what I would use this word. Anybody who's writing that the nuclear capability, they think that the nuclear capability is like something which is available lying on the shops, lying on here and there, where you collect and use a nuclear bomb. It's not like that. Pakistan nuclear capability is under a very safe hand, which has been recognized by the world all over. Whereas the Indians had multiple nuclear leaks. If you go into the history, Indian city was destroyed completely, and there were massive casualties because of the nuclear leak, and it still exists today. So whatever is happening today, as India views this region in the eyes of, used to view this region through the Indian lens, now they are viewing this region through the Chinese lens. There are three things which have come in between. One is the India, then is the China, and in India and China, in between comes Pakistan. And when Pakistan comes, you see what does the Western press say or what propaganda they do, that in Pakistan, if there is a if there is an extremist regime, extremist Islamic regime, they quote, which is never extremist.
Absolutely right, Brigadier GHAZNAFAR sir, absolutely right. Your point well taken. Dr. WASEEM sir, what about Indian use of proxies to wage terrorism on Pakistan covertly, triggering the political unrest, the spreading the fake news about Pakistan's globally, lobbying in the West, especially in the United States against Pakistan, secretly fueling the social media campaigns, and then some foreign-funded factions within the country, unfortunately, using such tools politically through social media, and then media to have vested interests or the campaigns against Pakistan's nuclear and the missile and even the military prowess. So, how do you see the Indian role in the recent sanctions, and even I categorize it as all the sanctions, politically motivated Indian lobbies are actually at work in Washington against Pakistan?
I have absolutely no doubt that the US national security mechanism and the US national security policy making process has a huge Indian influence inside. While the 1998 overt nuclearization by both India and Pakistan created a strategic stability in South Asia. So therefore, the chances of a conventional war between India and Pakistan for foreseeable future are very low. So India, rather than embarking on a conventional side of that, involved into a sub-conventional warfare with Pakistan and hybrid warfare unleashed against Pakistan in terms of supporting terrorism and then social media campaigns and everything. So on this side, India is supporting all the proxies for destabilizing Pakistan, and at the diplomatic level, it is actually influencing the US policymakers for putting sanctions against Pakistan's strategic capability. So India is actually trying to achieve many results out of it. One, at subconventional level, trying to demoralize the nation because of the increased terrorist attacks all around. And secondly, to put sanctions against Pakistan's strategic capability so that India can attain, from their perspective, the moral ascendancy over Pakistan. However, there is yet another angle. We see the kind of the war which was unleashed by Prime Minister Netanyahu in Israel and the kind of successes he has achieved, the dream of greater Middle East which is around the corner we have seen. So, I can see a lot of linkages between the current sanctions and the evolving situation in the Middle East, because we have seen Abraham I Accord which was successfully coined by Trump. Abraham II was around the corner before October 7, and I think when President Trump comes in, that should be his priority number one. So, in that context, Pakistan is the only Muslim nuclear country having a contiguous borders with Iran, and Iran is linked with whatever is happening in the Middle East. So, therefore, from that perspective, probably from the US national security policy perspective, Pakistan from their perspective can be a potential threat to their regional hegemony because of the nuclear factor. So, therefore, this could be one of the important constituents of the forthcoming government administration in the United States to change the behavior of Pakistan.
But if Israel has the right of self-defense in the name of genocidal war, the war crimes and ethnic cleansing across the board, across the region, why not? Pakistan has the right of self-defense when Pakistan wants peace in the region, and Pakistan supported that strategy of peace and stability through its own sacrifices. We have sacrificed more than 80,000 people, more than $130 billion in economy, and that's why we are saying that it is inevitable to have peace in the region if we want to develop and be prosperous. But how United States is actually supporting India, that is the real threat to Pakistan.
So, see the fundamentals.
Your point well taken. Mustafa, why the US is very much concerned that Pakistan might be getting or got a space launch vehicle or developing larger diameter solid rocket motors in excess to 1.4 meters diameter, and in that case Pakistan can launch a spacecraft, or it's considered by the US officials, that or imagined that it's going to be used only as intercontinental ballistic missile, and that's the threat for the United States, which is obviously entirely not the focus of Pakistan's missile program or its space vision 2047. Then why suppositions, speculations, imaginations, and then the sanctions on such a naive basis?
Well, sir, if I try to be the devil's advocate for a moment and consider myself a US policymaker who has to justify this decision of imposing sanctions, I would resort to an argument which is often cited in the literature on astropolitics. In the previous year, 2 books have been published that are seminal works. One is Original Sin by Bled Bowen, and the other is The Weapons in Space by Aaron Bateman. And a core theme that runs across both books is that space technologies are inherently dual use. And that is most apparent when it comes to satellite launch vehicles. We have seen that major spacefaring nations have actually converted their world-ending ICBMs into peaceful satellite launch vehicles. The caveat is that India is the only exception. India actually converted its peaceful satellite launch vehicle into its Agni series of ballistic missiles. And they're actively working to operationalize the Agni 6 missile, which would have a range that could actually strike within the United States. So again, it is very illogical that the US would assume that a capability which does not exist so far could threaten their national security, whereas India is actively developing a capability that could threaten their interest.
So, Dr. WASEEM, is it a coincidence that, as Mustafa said, in March India launched Agni 5 MIRV, the multiple reentry vehicle, missile with 5,000 to 8,000 kilometer range, and the US imposed sanctions on Pakistan in April 2024. Again, when India test fires a hypersonic missile of at least 1,500 kilometer of range in November, Recently, on December 18th, 2024, again, US imposed sanctions on Pakistani entities alleged of supporting the missile program. And secondly, why not imposing sanctions on India, which is developing intercontinental ballistic missile of 6,000 to 8,000 kilometers of range, Agni 5, and then 10,000 to 16,000 Agni 6 multiple re-entry vehicle ICBM systems. So it is very much clear that India has the intentions. It is not only China. It is not only the Chinese depth which India wants to address. India has never ever thought about or never ever deliberated upon that to whom they are going to have some sort of a target. But why these speculations and all imaginations and sanctions directed towards Pakistan?
Faisal, we have to see two contexts. First, why we needed the strategic capabilities and the missile delivery means. One, that our foreign policy and defense policy is of peaceful coexistence.
Yes,
and Pakistan does not harbor any aggressive designs against any other country. It is only for self-defense. So in case of self-defense, from our defense policy point of view, the only threat which is a genuine threat against Pakistan's national security emanates from India and its proxies. So in that context, whatever capability Pakistan has developed, it is against India. But from Indian perspective, what they have been trying to convince the US policymakers that India faces two-front war, one from China and one from Pakistan. So whatever capabilities they are developing is actually counterweight to China, because from their perspective, China was also involved in a development of long-range missiles. While Chinese national security actually involves development of capabilities, because previously their defense policy was defensive defense, means allowing the invader to come inside the mainland China and then through attrition warfare then throwing them out of the Chinese mainland. But now they have changed it to active defense. That means they won't allow anyone to even touch the Chinese mainland, and therefore they would like to have the delivery means whereby they could inflict casualties right away from their mainland.
Obviously.
So as they change their defense policy, so provided space to India for developing their missile capabilities and then convincing their the US national security advisor and policy makers that India, since was facing two-front war, one from China and one from Pakistan, so therefore they need to have a capability.
So what India is doing is not giving Pakistan a space to have that capability, because India is always announcing that it has a two-front war. Two-front means that China and Pakistan. When China is doing something and India is following that, why not when India is doing something and Pakistan has to do something on its defense, right to have defense?
This is the real politic. So therefore, the double standards of the United States policy, and they are not having balancing act towards South Asia vis-a-vis India and vis-a-vis Pakistan.
Means the United States has a clear bias towards India. So it is very much clear on that front. Mustafa, why the US has nothing done against India when it comes to the Indian space program? She had not only developed the space program, have lots of space launch vehicles, large diameter solid rocket motors, intercontinental ballistic missiles there and in process as well, dozens of the military surveillance and monitoring satellites over there, but also developed anti-satellite weaponry and daily tested those weapons also. So do you not think that the US-India partnership, the US military, strategic and space support to India is creating havoc in the region and strategic instability in South Asia, enhancing escalation ladder actually? So how do you respond to this one?
The Indo-US strategic defense partnership has a long history, but more recently, in the Indo-Pacific US defense strategy, which was published last year, the action plan specifically emphasizes that the US would try to support India's regional rise as well as its leadership, and they would do so by enhancing their defense space cooperation. While there is a military aspect, as you rightly pointed out, their civil space cooperation endeavors also have a dual use potential. For instance, they're going to launch the NISAR satellite, which is a joint collaboration between NASA and ISRO. It's going to be the most advanced synthetic aperture radar that has been developed so far, and it could be used for ISR purposes in the military domain as well.
Your point well taken, but Pakistan has just extended some couple of years back the national vision from 3 flanks like land, sea and air to the 5-1, the land, sea, air, cyber and space. So it is very much there comprehensively in the national security policy of Pakistan. But to be honest, your point is very important on that aspect. As you have said, Brigadier Retired GHAZNAFAR Sahab, when Pakistan successfully test-fired Shaheen 3 of 2,750 kilometers of range, pioneer of Pakistan's nuclear and missile program, Lieutenant General Khalid Kidwai, retired, said, the prime focus of our missile technology, including Ababil missiles of 2,200 kilometers of range, is India, especially Indian nuclear strategic installation in the submarine bases, particularly far from the eastern border in Andaman and Nicobar Islands, as these could be the potential threat for Pakistan. So Pakistan needs long-range missiles to target such far-flung targets which are going to pose threat for Pakistan. So how do you see the Pakistan's overall national security paradigm and what the General Kidwai said earlier?
You see, Pakistan national security paradigm is basically against the, as the already have been very amply talked about, against the development of the nuclear capability. It's not the nuclear capability. On August, I think in 1998, India developed the thermonuclear weapon also. They conducted a test of thermonuclear weapon. And you see their policy of the, you see as far as the ICBMs, the intercontinental ballistic missile and the land-based nuclear missile, then they go into the submarine launched ballistic missile, SLMBS, and then they go on to the strategic bomber, which are aircraft with the nuclear bomb. And the whole purpose of the nuclear tirade is to increase their nuclear deterrence. As we talked about previously, that they are aiming toward the China. They say they have a two-front war of the China also and Pakistan also. But another factor which you have to put in to view the policy in completeness is the American orientation towards China also. And American animosity towards China. Last American national security strategy very clearly pointed out that America, in totality, if you take this said, that America will take all these stakeholders on board inside America and outside America to counter China's weight into the regional power and into the international power, because this is one of the main aim of their security policies. And when Pakistan, whatever General Kidwai said, if you see the range of the missile, it exactly matches the statements of General Kidwai. But we cannot restrict ourselves only 2,000 to 2,700, 2,800. If India goes beyond 6,000, if India goes beyond 5,000, Pakistan has to develop a counter capability, and Pakistan would be justified in doing it. But now, since the world is changing, whatever has happened in Israel you have seen, whatever is happening in Middle East you have seen, whatever has happened with Russia you have seen, and in Ukraine and after losing of Syria, Americans think to have been gaining a strategic and a tactical advantage, not only in the region but in the international policies also. That's why they are pressing Pakistan, because if General George Shultz, it was said previously that America is going to tackle 5 countries in 7 years. So those theses are coming in between. And Pakistan, since it happens to possess the nuclear weapon, not only nuclear weapon, Pakistan possesses a very comprehensive infrastructure for safeguarding and for delivery of those nuclear weapons. And naturally,
so, Brigadier, you are absolutely right. You are absolutely right. But these US sanctions straight away started in 1965, and particularly when we are talking about Pakistan's nuclear or the missile program, continuously United States is targeting from in 1970s, then putting sanctions from the 1979 till now. Whether it's because of the Pakistan stature that only reliable and responsible nuclear and missile capable Islamic country, or because of the US strategic partner India in fear of these technologies, or its old strategic partner Israel don't want these technologies to be with Pakistan, why the US always pursue the policy of use and throw away? Why?
I told you, if you want a one-liner answer, I gave you, and I believe in that one line answer is that Pakistan is a Muslim country. Neocons, Zionists are fearful of the Muslim path. They have destroyed Syria, they have destroyed Lebanon, they have destroyed Iraq. There is a so mockery of merit in case of Israel, where the world leaders told the lie to the whole of the international world. Once they said that Iraq possesses a nuclear power, and you remember Sir Chilcote inquiry, which goes on to the 7,000 pages. It established, he's a very distinguished lawyer, British. He established that there were no nuclear weapons in, there was no weapon of mass destruction with Iraq. But Iraq was destroyed. Why it was destroyed? Because it was Saddam Hussein. Why it was destroyed? Because it was a Muslim country. And you see whatever Netanyahu, that terrorist and the fascist regime has done. There have been more than 1 lakh deaths, 1 lakh shaheeds in Gaza. What has happened? What has the world done? ICG decisions, the international pressure. Did it stop Netanyahu from killing people? Because he was forced by a world-class terrorist like Biden and Kamala Harris. And what did Kamala Harris say?
You are absolutely right. Indo-Israel nexus in support of United States. They don't want any Islamic country to be strengthened when it comes to the strategic and defense perspective, but particularly Pakistan is targeted by the by United States, and India and Israel is always behind that. Mustafa, what it means when in just last 10 years, more than $20 billion of the military hardware was purchased by India from the United States. Then US given blanket access of equipment, sensitive technologies to India, including the space technologies, the space launch vehicles, rocket motors, jet engines, defense shields, joint military exercises, then Quad, 2+2 AUKUS, the basic exchange and cooperation agreement BICA, sharing sensitive geospatial, satellite and aeronautical data as well, and the US given India a free hand also, but tightening Pakistan, leveling different sort of allegations, doing detrimental legislations and imposing sanctions. So we were just couple of years back, we were the non-NATO ally, and US has repeated time and again what rightly said, the roller coaster ride between Pakistan and, but it is not the roller coaster ride. It seems that US is always targeting Pakistan's real defense strength.
Sir, as you rightly mentioned, that sanctions on Pakistan by the US have a long history. But this particular sanctions, they are pursuant to the Executive Order 13382, and that was implemented by the Bush administration back in 2005.
Yes.
Coincidentally, just a year earlier, we were designated by the US as a major non-NATO ally. And 2024 marked the 20th anniversary of that official designation. So going back to your first question, I think the timing is very unfortunate. You don't expect such remarks from a US official on the 20th anniversary of you being an ally of the US. But I think this would also lock in the incoming administration. They would not have any leverage to deviate from this policy. And if anything can be speculated about the Trump administration, it's that they are going to be anything but soft on Pakistan. And Matthew Miller, who is the spokesperson of the US State Department, he was very unequivocal by saying that when it comes to allies, we don't mind sanctioning them when it comes to protecting our own interests.
So why not India?
Well,
so India is also a fast ally of the United States, but that is the separate debate. Dr. WASEEM, after an illegitimate state of Israel's genocidal war in Gaza that engulfed whole of the Middle East now, we have seen some of the US tactics to undermine or neutralize other regions in defense of Israel, either by invasion or occupation, destruction, or through disarmament, especially through the US sanctions or pressurizing tactics. Do you not think that it's like that to make Pakistan toothless, give maximum advantage to India, or might be even to Israel, who is also a strategic partner to India? So how do you see this triangle?
I think the evolving situation in the Middle East, in which, and from the US national security perspective, it is a declared agenda that the security of Israel is #1 priority of the United States, any administration coming in here. So how the situation has evolved that any potential threat to Israel's security has been neutralized to a great extent.
Definitely.
The only potential challenger, which is Iran, is also facing a lot of challenges because the Iran's axis of resistance have been undermined to a great extent. Iran's its own mainland has been attacked quite a number of times. And we have seen that the United States and the United Kingdom have been actively involved in launching airstrikes in Yemen as well as in Iraq. So therefore, it is almost the whole of the region where the entire global power politics is playing out. So in that context, from the Israeli lens, the only potential challenger after Iran could be Pakistan. And if you see in the context of Abraham II Accord, in which Saudi Arabia was about to make some sort of concessions and a rapprochement with Israel, and if that again kickstarts when President Trump comes in, which he has already announced. So in that context, if Saudi Arabia has made some sort of rapprochement with Israel, then probably the pressure would come on Pakistan.
Definitely.
And if the sanctions,
you are absolutely right. Actually, we have run short of time. Brigadier retired GHAZNAFAR sir, how Washington sanctions will affect Pakistan, as Pakistan's missile technology is not technically dependent upon the United States. This technology is mostly based on indigenous resources, which are solely dependent on our own innovations, research, and locally developed technologies. But sometimes when we need some sort of a technical assistance from the friendly nations, might be to upgrade or something like that, but not the United States. So how do you see this perspective, that how these sanctions are going to affect Pakistan in any case?
Faisal, go back into the history of development of nuclear weapons, or first nuclear test Pakistan carried on, and go into the history of how did Fakhar Bhutto has called Dr. Qadir Khan, and after that Pakistan proceeded on to the development of that capability, and Dr. Qadir acquired weapons or technology from all over the world, and they developed it in Kahuta. So Pakistan has got a lot of resources to do that. At times you have to do things through direct means, at times you have to do things through the indirect means. And the world is full of people who would ready to supply you the equipment and the requirements which you want to meet, and internationally also, and through different countries also. There are channels which are existing. I know there are channels which exist always. It is not that if the Americans are saying something, there are people who are in the supply chain down below the line. They are also listening to the American policies and all that. Americans do not know many of the things. There were terrorists which were training for hijacking the aircraft in America, and the FBI was sleeping and the CIA was sleeping, and they were able to hijack the aircraft and land into the World Trade Center. So it happens in the international racket and international war. Second thing is Pakistan's capability.
Your point well taken. We have run short of time. Sorry to interrupt you, Brigadier Sahib. Mustafa, when it comes to the Pakistan's ballistic missile range, it's based upon the threat spectrum, and the real threat is India. So Delhi knew well that Pakistani missiles can hit each and every nook and corner of India, and that's why India wants the US to neutralize that threat by sanctioning Pakistan and its missile technology, for the purpose that Delhi is also using the strong Israeli lobbies in the United States to get active against Pakistan particularly. Your thoughts on that?
Sir, as you rightly...
Very brief, because we have run short of time.
Right, sir. As you rightly noted, that Delhi's threat perceptions are shaped by the assumption that it would face a two-front war. And to that end, it is actively trying to undermine Pakistan's missile program for years now. And something that both India and Israel look eye to eye on is that Pakistan's missile program should be undermined. And they're doing so by collaborating with each other. Secondly, they are utilizing the lobbies, the influence that they hold within US policy circles to put increasing pressure on Pakistan.
Dr. WASEEM, do you not think that the US sanctions are unilateral, selective, discriminatory, and hypocritic actually? As it turned blind eye towards India, which pursuing the missile achievements and advancements in more vigorous manner. Pakistan's missile program is not only India specific, but who will guarantee that Indian missiles will never launch against the United States and any other Western countries? And what would be the ultimate perspective of the upcoming Trump administration on such type of sanctions from Washington?
I think whatever the United States has done, it actually reflects the double standards of the United States towards overall stability in South Asia. Such actions would create instability in South Asia, strategic instability. However, from my perspective, when the Trump administration comes in, it will give more leverage to India, and because the Trump is already in competition with China. And he was the one who changed the US national security strategy from terrorism to great power competition.
Obviously.
So therefore, and he used competition with China 33 times, and President Biden used competition with China 55 times. So therefore, now we can see even that frequency might increase. So from that perspective, the India would provide a huge space for US grand strategic designs against China. So from the great power politics and great power competition, I believe that India's foreign policy and India's defense outlook vis-a-vis serving the United States bulwark against China, probably that is creating a space.
And definitely in that case, Pakistan has to pursue not only the missile technology, but also whatever is happening in the eastern front. So Pakistan has to prepare itself for its defense, and it's the sole right of any sovereign state. Thank you very much, Dr. WASEEM, for your presence here. Thank you very much, Mustafa, for your precious time and candid views. And thank you very much, Brigadier Retired GHAZNAFAR Sahab, for being online and having a very elaborative and fruitful views from your side as well. Thank you, so nice of you. Viewers, as you have just listened to our panelists, Pakistan-US roller coaster ride, or might be crust and trough like action, will continue even when there would be a Trump administration in January next year. But a US national security strategy 2017, Indo-Pacific policy, the Quad 2+2 or AUKUS, or the so-called net security provider, or the counterweight to China, it seems that all leverages are there for India, although India is ruining the international law, international policy, export control regimes. When it comes to the nuclear suppliers group or all others, just name it, India is violating each and everything. But US-China containment, China's containment policy is actually the main proponent behind the recent sanctions on Pakistan's missile technology. Israel and India, no doubt, these two are the countries, this is the nexus which is actually working in Washington with the support of either the Biden administration or might be the Trump administration. There is no difference in between, but that will continue against Pakistan. Pakistan wants peace, no other reason. But Pakistan, we want peace for regional development. It's embedded in Pakistan's foreign policy, it's there in the national security policy, and whatever there is in defense and strategic domains. Nuclear and the missile technology is always there for the self-defense. It is not for aggression against any other country. But remember, Pakistan's missile program is fundamentally the response of the regional threat spectrum and what the security environment is. The US criticism and the hypocritic sanctions on Pakistan's missile program are not only actually unjust, but also severely undermine sovereignty, integrity, and the right of self-defense in the whole world, where the US actually arming her allies like India with the latest weapons and technologies, supporting space program, its strategic and military purposes, arming the space weaponry, and encouraging India to have ICBMs or the intercontinental ballistic missile technology. Out of that, it is possible, it is less possible that actions would be taken sternly against India. But defending itself is Pakistan's right. Pakistan's missile and nuclear technology is not only a deterrence against persistent threats, but also the Indian hegemonical and nefarious designs. This is all from today's Foresight. It's time to sign off. Allah Hafiz Nasr.